Hey everybody, it's me Jack and I'm back with another review. Well, recently it was announced that Ben Affleck would no longer be playing the role of the superhero Batman. Some were disappointed by this news, others were delighted. Me personally, I was disappointed because I thought he was a pretty good Batman. And today I'm going to review what is, in my opinion, his best film, Argo, the Best Picture winner of 2012. Based off of real events surrounding the Iranian hostage crisis in the late 70s and early 80s, the film begins with the Iranians taking the American embassy. However, 6 Americans manage to escape and hide in the Canadian embassy. A CIA agent named Tony Mendez, played by Ben Affleck, comes up with a plan to get them out of the country by pretending that they're a film crew location scouting for a science fiction movie called Argo. Now, despite winning Best Picture, the big award, Argo only took home 2 other Oscars, Best Editing and Best Screenplay. Ben Affleck wasn't even nominated for Best Director, which is just ludicrous. How can a film win Best Picture without its director at least being nominated? Argo is one of those movies that you would swear wasn't based on a true story, because you just can't believe that something like this actually went down. But this did actually happen. I can honestly say that this is one of the Best Picture winners that I've seen the most. I don't think it's one of the best, but I do think it's one of the most enjoyable and watchable. Movies like The Deer Hunter or Lawrence of Arabia or Gone with the Wind. They're great movies, but they are very long and sometimes depressing. So they aren't exactly movies that I watch a lot. But Argo, I've seen it many times because it's short, simple, and fun. Ben Affleck gives easily one of his best performances in this movie. True, it's not Oscar-worthy, but it's still very good. Tony Mendez is a very good main character. He's not a superhero or anything like that. He's just a normal guy who's putting his life on the line to save these people. Even at the end of the movie, when his superiors scrap the entire operation, he still goes through with it. He's not a deep or complex character, but he's not supposed to be. He's an agent trying to do the right thing. And because of this, he's a character that we root for. The rest of the cast are also fantastic. John Goodman does an excellent job playing John Chambers, the real-life makeup artist who helped Tony Mendez with this operation. He's the guy who did the makeup for Planet of the Apes. Again, it's just so cool that this actually happened. A Hollywood makeup artist took part in a rescue operation. Bryan Cranston is fantastic as Mendez's boss. He plays the role very seriously and sometimes can be very over the top and enjoyable. Especially near the end where he just blows up on this guy. Easily my favorite actor in this movie is Alan Arkin as Lester Siegel, a film producer that helps them set up this fake movie. He was nominated for an Oscar for this movie, and rightfully so, because his performance is just magnificent. He perfectly embodies the role of the Hollywood producer, and has some of the best and funniest lines in the movie. The actors that play the Americans who are hiding out in the Canadian embassy are also very good, considering how the whole movie centers around rescuing them. They do a very good job of making you get to know them and care about them, even though they don't have all that much screen time in the first half. They do a good job of conveying the right amount of fear, as they're trapped in a country filled with people that want them dead. The last character is the Canadian ambassador, played by Victor Garber. He too isn't in the movie as much, and I'll talk about that later. Having seen many interviews with the real Canadian ambassador, Victor Garber did a great job of recapturing his spirit. Even his line deliveries and his inflections are very similar to that of the real Canadian ambassador. This movie definitely deserved the Oscar for Best Screenplay because this is an excellent script. Chris Terrio, the writer of this movie, blended Hollywood satire with political drama perfectly. There's a brilliant scene in which the cast for this Argo science fiction movie are reading through the script, and they intercut this with news footage talking about the hostage crisis. It's a great contrast. You have make-believe science fiction and real-life terrorism. It's very easy for me to see why this movie won Best Picture, because it really is a love letter to Hollywood. At a time when everybody was trying to make a science fiction movie because of the success of Star Wars. We get all these great, and by by great, I mean laughably terrible, costumes, including a guy dressed up as Chewbacca, except painted blue. At times, this movie can be truly scary. The opening scene in particular is very unsettling. It just plunges you into the horror and the chaos of the day that the embassy was overthrown. They start smashing through the windows and climbing in, and taking hostages. There is no music here at all. It's realistic and bone-chilling. Affleck does a fantastic job of building suspense in this movie. There are scenes where nothing is really happening, but the tension is just building. There's a scene where they're down in the bazaar, and an Iranian starts antagonizing them, and they just barely manage to get away. Easily the best, though, is at the very end of the movie, when they're about to fly out of Tehran. They go to the airport only to realize that they don't have their reservation, so the CIA have to confirm their tickets, and they manage to do it just in time. They board the plane, but then, just then, a bunch of Iranians start chasing them down the runway, and they just barely make it out. And the moment when they realize that they're completely out of Iran, you're just like, whew. It's one of those movies where, even though you know how it ends, you're still on the edge of your seat. Now yes, I am aware that a lot of this stuff didn't actually happen and was just put in there to add more tension, but you know what, I think it worked. These were necessary changes for the sake of building more tension. Something else I really like about this movie is that it's not completely black and white. Now, recently I reviewed Braveheart, and one of my biggest complaints with that movie was that it was very black and white. It portrayed all of the Scottish as the good guys and all of the English as the bad guys. But what's great about this movie is that even though technically the Iranians are the bad guys, they actually add humanity to them. There's a great prologue at the beginning of the movie that talks about the history of Iran and their relationship with America. And you learn that they actually have pretty good reasons for antagonizing America. That's not to say what they're doing is right, but you understand where they're coming from. Another thing I like about this movie is that there's actually an Iranian who's a good guy. I talked about this in my Braveheart review. When doing a movie like this, there should be at least one character that is like this. The housekeeper at the Canadian embassy finds out that these are Americans. Despite this, however, she doesn't tell the authorities, and in the end she escapes to Iraq. This is more of what Braveheart should have been, more three-dimensional. But now let's get to my main problem with this movie. That is, of course, the inaccuracies involving the Canadians. This movie minimalizes Canada's role in the operation. The movie gives most of the credit for the operation to the CIA. As a Canadian, this does get under my skin a little bit. Now, I understand that this is an American movie and so you want an American hero. But come on, you could have given the Canadian ambassador a bit more to do. That being said, it doesn't bother me that much, and I'll tell you why. Because the movie does still portray the Canadians as heroes. The film shows that the Canadians were willing to risk their lives to shelter the Americans. There's even a scene where Tony and the ambassador talk about this. So yes, the Canadians do remain heroes in this story. I just wish they could have played a bigger role. But honestly, it doesn't bother me that much. The movie is still excellent. The writing is great, the acting is terrific, and it's just such an interesting story. And it holds great historical significance, because it was a time when two countries came together and saved people's lives. And despite the inaccuracies, there are times in this movie where it really feels like history has come to life. The movie makes excellent use of actual news footage from the time. And when the movie is over, it just leaves you with a good feeling. As the credits roll and we see pictures of the real-life people right next to the people that played them in the movie, as well as a voiceover by former President Jimmy Carter. That, combined with everything else, makes this a great movie. It wasn't necessarily my pick for Best Picture that year, that would be Django Unchained, but it is still an excellent piece of film, and I'm going to give Argo a 9 out of 10. Thanks for watching my review, and be sure to let me know what you think of Argo in the comment section down below, and I will see you next time.